Hello ladies and gentlemen, this will be the final Dune Awakening video, and instead of a normal video, let me talk about why you should play and buy this game. For those of you who have not seen the other 5 videos I've made, this game, Dune Awakening, is an MMO crafting game, similar to Rust or Ark. If you've never read Frank Herbert's Dune, that is okay. The story of this game is as if the book never happened. Paul Atreides, the main character of the book, was never born, and you are a Bene Gesserit agent looking for the Fremen. That is the basic idea. You are special, but also not so special in the Dune universe. You get to encounter all the cool things from Dune, but don't need to have read the book or seen any of the movies to enjoy or understand this game. Therefore, I will break this video down into 2 parts. The first part will be my basic thoughts on the game, as well as some of its mechanics, and the second part will be the actual game's influence and what and why you should consider playing this game. So, part 1. I love this game. There's no doubt about it. If you've watched any of the other videos on my channel, you know from them, and just watching them alone, that I love this game. This game has consumed my life and I've played over 400 hours of it. Yes, that's a lot, and I've already got to it. It is an amazing MMO for the fact that there is different ways for people to think about MMOs to begin with. So, let me start off by talking about what an MMORPG is to me. To me, MMORPGs are games like WoW or Warframe. Now, I chose these 2 different games to compare for a reason. World of Warcraft, or WoW, is the granddaddy of MMOs these days. I was there playing the original when it came out, after playing RuneScape, which for many is the pioneer. WoW changed the genre and defined the way that we now look at MMOs. We got fetch quests, escort quests, daily quests, and even more that were defined by WoW. These kind of repetitive tasks defined what an MMORPG was to people, especially when the hype of WoW produced a lot of clones. However, when it came out, that was revolutionary, but these days it's not so much, and most of the people talk about the limitations of WoW and its limited success. That being said, the MMO genre has changed a lot for most of us throughout the years. 2 come to mind that push the bounds of what was considered an MMO. Warframe, as the most of you know, is close to my heart, and even though I have never played it for the channel, I have put over 1,000 hours into it over 5 years, and more money than I care to admit. Now, the idea of pay-to-play was new to me. WoW used the idea for years back when $10 was nothing, and you had that lying around each month. So you subscribed and got to play each month. But as time went on, the game has evolved and the price has gone up, and the money that you spend on WoW is, well, it's more than most of us can afford. When the price of a month subscription for WoW could easily buy you a whole video game to play and hundreds of hours of content, it's a little bit different. So when Warframe came along, and it offered the free-to-play experience, where you could make it from level 1 to 100 for free. Side note, Warframe doesn't actually have levels that way, but you get the idea. I spent money on Warframe in a different way, because it was free to play and I got my enjoyment out of it and showing off the cool things I had found with my friends or having the experience with them playing it. Much like I did with the WoW years before, doing raids, and staying up till 3 AM doing dungeons with my friends, and all that other stuff, but I got it for free. All this is to say, the genre of MMOs, to me, is something you and a bunch of mates or strangers that can naturally have adventures together and even make new friends. This is, of course, the experience with MMOs growing up, my experience with MMOs. So, how does all of that link to Dune Awakening? Dune Awakening is considered an MMO, a crafting MMO. You can change from a range of servers all connected to one main server called a Siege. In my case, I'm on Palma, connected to Siege Ramel. The main Siege is the deep desert. Every other server connects to that server to go to the deep desert. And everything is connected via that as well. The overworld is how you travel and is the main area of the game. The Hugger Basin is where you spend most of your time. That's where we are now in the video. It's where you craft, build, and spend 90% of your time, but it is not the main aspect of the game. You use the overworld to get to the main cities around the map, and this aspect alone is what makes this a unique MMO. Dune Awakening is more than an MMO and more than a crafting game. A lot of the grind for Dune revolves around cooperation and friendship. If you have a party, your loot is split up, but of course it's also doubled because loot is individual to the person. So you get double the amount of loot depending on how many friends you have. And yes, there are duping bugs that people regularly make use of, but I'm not one of them. Personally, I think that is kind of low. I had an amazing little guild with Hilo and some amazing guys who did most of the story and the DD alone. Went spice mining a few times, but it was more or less just him alone supporting us. The deep desert in Dune is amazing and awesome, but it does need work. I understand what people have been saying about it, and it is a bit weird. The whole thing is an open desert with little to no cover, which makes sense, it is the deep desert. The dungeons move around the map each wipe, as well as the spice fields. The large ones only spawn in PvP zones, and all the top tier resources as well. This is not to say that PvE half of the desert is any worse, with medium fields and access to all of the dungeons. My opinion on the split map is that I agree but also kind of don't. I feel like it should be more of a choose your own adventure system, as in having two separate maps, one full PvP and one full PvE. Right now, it feels like you're stuck no matter what you're looking for. If you're looking for a dungeon to farm and get some gear and blueprints as well as resources in the PvE zone setting, you're limited to the larger rocks in the beginning areas of the deep desert, as well as most of the southern part of the map. This limits where you can build and what resources you can collect. It also limits what you can discover in the deep desert. Now, a lot of you would say, well, yes, you do PvP for the rewards and it brings what you earn. And you would be right. However, this game is not Rust and more MMO than PvP, so crafting and the part of the crafting game is more focused around the MMO elements. Therefore, the idea of being stuck is a little silly. Furthermore on this, the PvP zone is often held continuously by one group who controls the spice trade on the market. And last I checked, the current guild who collects the large spice fields each week completely, with a group of 20 or more, had it at 100,000 Solaris per stack of spice, which is absurd. This effectively eliminates half of the player base from even competing in the race, hence my idea of changing the DD, allowing people to have even more fun playing and even the playing field for people. I'm aware that a lot of YouTubers think Funcom made a mistake adding PvE at all to the DD, however I disagree, and understand that as the current story DLC included, the DD is optional. But if you're like me and do the PvE content and still want to help or participate in the endgame, you join a larger guild with just some of your mates, or even your mates join a larger guild and go into the desert with all 5 of you and are still struck down by large PvP groups. Yeah, you can stick to doing the medium PvE spice zones, but what's the fun in that? You might as well take 3 of your friends and get little rewards joining a larger guild and doing the dungeons, of which we did 2 dungeons with just the 4 of them. Therefore, the argument that making a PvE zone is pandering to small guilds is not true. Make 2 maps, one PvP and one PvE. There will be more Landsrad competition at the moment the argument feels like these big PvP aggressive guilds complaining because they will lose their advantage. It sounds familiar to a lot of things. Either way, I hope Funcom continues to work on the deep desert, as the concept itself is awesome and I had lots of fun in the deep desert with Kilo flying around. Dune's unique endgame and unique take on an MMO makes this an excellent game. Not only did I have to manage my water, power and funds, but also vehicles I built with my own hands and blueprints galore. I hope to see more skins for armor and weapons, as more high tier special weapons such as the Jolt Sword you can sometimes get from the Deep Desert or from completing the Swordmaster quest. Would be nice to see more of them. Doing an amazing amount of damage to boot, by the way. I got new boosters for my assault, making it resistant to storms and overheat less. In other words, just awesome stuff. And it's the same feel of finding S-tier weapons in WoW from a raid. You get the rush of finding a cool blueprint that you then have to build with your own hard-earned materials. That is then an S-tier object. I love this game, and I've put well over 400 hours into it, as I said so far. At the moment I have stopped playing. I'm finished with the main story and all the side quests. My friend Edward's computer blew up, quite literally, and Kilo has stopped playing until more content is added. Funcom's 10-year plan and roadmap are looking awesome for this game, and I can't wait to see where it goes, and for more content. This is the end of my part of talking about what I love about Dune. And overall, I think that this game is an absolutely unique MMO crafting game. It's cornered a very niche market, somewhere between Ark and WoW. It feels like an MMO with crafting elements that we all want. The building your base, the doing all that, and it is awesome. So, on to part 2. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, Dune Awakening is an excellent survival crafting game with a mix of quests, crafting, and gathering that lean heavily on the survival aspects. You need to gather water for yourself, your machines, and everything requires water. Even recipes require water to craft. This places water above money, food, and even some items in the game as you continue through the story, and require more and more of it. You also gain abilities to get more and more water as you go through the story. This, however, is dependent on whether you chose to earn your rewards through going through the story or by collecting intel as you go around in the bases, which allow you to collect more recipes. The pure survival element loop is quite good. It is not as intense as other survival games that are similar. You need water and medical kits. It's about the only thing you have to watch out for as you go through the deep desert, or the desert in general. The MMO elements of this game fill in the gap for the survival part by adding quests that help you progress the higher levels of resources and the different areas. All of which are supported by the crafting elements, the building of the base and the machines. All of your equipment is blended into the combat elements and survival elements of this game. They all help each other and support each other, and the main features of this game. To make that make sense, your combat element is supported by the quests. The quests are supported by the survival element. Survival element is supported by the crafting part. Now the bad. At the moment, the story is lacking. If you take the quests, unlock path, which I would suggest, you are led all over the map and eventually to the deep desert with a small side quest to complete in each area. It sounds great, however, as you progress through the game and the survival aspect becomes less relevant, you become less dependent on water and other things and begin to spend more time in the public areas, Arrakis and Harko Village, using the auction house and other services as well as purchasing skins and other things for your equipment. The loop of having to power your base after the early game is hard, and obviously in the beginning it requires lots of fuel cells, which you collect as you are on the ground and is a resource, and is turned into other things as well. However, in the late game, when you get wind turbines and eventually spice generators, this loop begins to feel almost an exponential growth to the point of insanity. The wind turbines, you think, great, renewable energy, but no, you still have to create an obscene amount of lube by crafting and creating and collecting several different resources to craft the lube in the first place. Overall, this means that your wind turbines don't produce as much power as anything else. You end up producing less power than you did when you were early game. Now, yes, this can be solved with spice generators, which are a late game thing, and if you have a large guild, you have one building as a guild hall and a few spice generators, and some of your spice goes into the generator, and bish bash bosh Bob's your uncle. They produce 1,000 volts, which is more than enough. However, unless you have a large amount of lube or other components, you end up spending more of your time trying to power your base to stop it from decaying. I don't disagree with the base upkeep in the crafting game. It needs some kind of base decay system, otherwise you'd have bases just everywhere from people who built one and then left it there. And there are resources that spawn on the ground that you could easily build a base around. But I do feel like the upkeep of wind turbines is too steep. And there should be an intermediary between them and the spice generator. As a solo, I can get about 7 to 8 days out of the 20 and a full powered base at top tier. I've already talked about the DD in part 1, but I'll sum it up. It needs work. Overall, Dune Awakening is an amazing game. I would love to see more changes that this game made, as said, but overall this game is awesome. And I am very, very happy with the quality and overall aesthetic of the game. 10 out of 10 Funcom, you have done an excellent job. I hope the previous videos on my channel have been fun to watch and made you want to go play Dune on your own, and I hope you do go play Dune. This game needs more players. My suggestion would be join a guild, get some mates, and have a good time surviving the desert. Oh, and remember, friends are water too.